good evening. Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. It's November 5th, 2025. This story will be out tomorrow morning, pretty sure. I have an update for you regarding some issues with Israel, Gaza, and some big corporations. So I'm going to go to the first story. Leaked U.S. State Department docs unveil first formal acknowledgement of Israeli units committing gross rights abuses. And I call Israel also Izzy. The U.S. has failed to hold Izzy accountable in the past for clear human rights abuses, including against U.S. citizens. This came out October 31st. A classified U.S. State Department report found that Izzy soldiers committed many hundreds of potential violations of U.S. human rights law in the Gaza Strip that would require multiple years to review. The Washington Post reported on 31 October. Details of the report prepared by the State Department's Office of Inspector General were provided to the Post by two U.S. officials. The report has, for the first time, acknowledged the scale of Izzy actions in Gaza that fall under the purview of Lehi laws, the landmark legislation that bars U.S. security assistance to foreign military units credibly accused of gross human rights abuses. However, the Office of Inspector General report raised doubts about the prospects for accountability for Izzy's actions given the large backlog of incidents and the nature of the review process, which is deferential to the Izzy Defense Forces, of course. What worries me is that accountability will be forgotten now that the noise of the conflict is dying down, said Charles Blaha, a former State Department official responsible for overseeing the application of the Lehi laws. The report was completed just days before the 11 October ceasefire of Gaza between Israel and Hamas went into effect. Since that time, Izzy has continued to kill Palestinian civilians and restrict aid entering the Strip as Palestinians suffer from food shortages, malnutrition, and starvation. Several atrocities committed by Izzy forces since the start of the genocide 2 years ago have triggered reviews under the Lehi laws. In April 2024, 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers were killed by 3 Izzy drone strikes, one after another, on 3 separate WCK vehicles. Yes, I remember that. The drones opened fire even though the WCK had shared the convoy's coordinates and route with the Izzy military in advance. The victims held Australian, British, Palestinian, Polish, and dual U.S.-Canadian citizenships. In February 2024, Izzy forces opened fire, including with tanks, on Palestinians trying to get desperately needed aid in Gaza. At least 112 Palestinians were killed and 760 were injured in what became known as the Flower Massacre. However, the White House claimed it was not able to reach definitive conclusions on whether U.S. weapons were used in the attacks. I see. But doesn't Israel get all of their weapons from us? Well, I guess there's some that come from Europe, apparently. Anyway, the U.S. provides at least $3.8 billion in aid to Izzy yearly and has provided tens of billions more since 2023 to assist the genocide in Gaza. However, it is unlikely the U.S. will withhold military aid to Izzy and hold units accountable for the many violations mentioned in the new State Department report. The State Department working group tasked with making determinations about Lehi law violations includes representatives of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem and the Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs, 2 entities that often advocate for Izzy within the U.S. system. Well, that's really helpful, isn't it? If the working group does conclude that Izzy units are ineligible for continued funding, the U.S. Secretary of State must approve the finding. We know he's not going to do that, right? The Secretary of State under former U.S. President Joe Biden, Antony Blinken, was a strong advocate for Izzy throughout the genocide. U.S. President Donald Trump's new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has close ties to J billionaire Paul Singer, who is a strong supporter of Izzy and has funded Rubio's election campaigns over the years. Yep, just can't get out of the... We have no autonomy in this country. To date, the U.S. has not withheld any assistance to any ISI unit despite clear evidence, said Josh Paul, a former State Department official speaking with the Post. Blinken's State Department refused to halt aid to ISI units even after a 78-year-old U.S. citizen, Omar Assad, was detained at a checkpoint in the West Bank in 2022 and murdered by ISI soldiers. Assad owned a grocery store in the city of Milwaukee in the U.S. state of Wisconsin before returning to his place of birth in Palestine after retiring. Earlier this week, the New York Times reported that a former U.S. military policeman who investigated the 2022 killing of U.S. Palestinian journalist Shireen Abu al-Akleh, who, by the way, was an Orthodox Christian, said an ISI soldier deliberately shot her, but his superiors at the State Department changed the conclusions of his report to claim the killing was unintentional. So much for backing Christians, isn't it? You already hear Trump, we got to go to Nigeria to stop the killing of the Christians there, even though that's been going on for over a decade, and we didn't say diddly squat. And the fact we already have special forces there, supposedly fighting Boko Haram and some other terrorists. I mean, I read a whole article on that a few months back. We're in there and it's really counterinsurgency. It's not really fighting off the terrorists. In any case, let me go on. I got sidetracked. The U.S. under President Trump has been no better. I don't see any difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration on this issue, said Blaha, the former State Department official in charge of the office that implements the Leahy laws. So in other words, they're aware of it, but they can't do anything about it. Their hands are tied because they are owned by these genocidal maniacs. Terrific. Almost feels like a waste even bringing this up in the news, isn't it? It's just doesn't make any difference. Lord have mercy. The other story came out October 30. Secret details of ISI's mammoth deal with Google and Amazon revealed. ISI has forced U.S. tech giants, Google and Amazon, to violate their own legal obligations under a 2021 cloud services contract with West Jerusalem, according to a joint investigation by several news media outlets, including The Guardian. The J-States contracts with U.S. tech platforms have been under close scrutiny following widespread accusations, including from the UN, that its military response to the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack that killed over 1,200 people constitutes a genocide. Known as Project Nimbus, the $1.2 billion deal reportedly bars the firms from restricting the ISI government's access to cloud services they provide, even if it violates their terms of use. The reports, carried by The Guardian along with 972 Magazine and Local Call, suggest the deal also reportedly requires the two companies to secretly notify West Jerusalem using a so-called winking mechanism should any foreign state or court seek access to ISI data stored in the cloud. Terrific. The wink involves the U.S. firm paying ISI an amount between 1,000 and 9,999 shekels that equates to the international dialing code of the request source each time they transfer its data to a foreign nation. The scheme effectively allows the tech firms to leak information on third-party data requests normally regarded as confidential. Google and Amazon are also reportedly to face heavy financial penalties if they cut ISI off from their services. The J-State can make use of any service at will as long as it does not breach ISI law, infringe on copyright, or involve reselling the company's technology, according to the leaked text of the contract. The cause is allegedly aimed at preventing a situation in which the U.S. tech giants would be forced to break ties with ISI over pressure from employees, shareholders, or activists. I see. Blackmail, tying their hands behind their back. Good Lord. Google employees increasingly protested against the company's ties with the Israeli government amid the war in Gaza over the past years. In April 2024, the company fired nearly 30 such workers, accusing them of disrupting the work process. In July 2025, Google co-founder Sergey Brin accused the UN of being transparently anti-Semitic over a report accusing tech firms, including Alphabet, of profiting from the Gaza war. Everything's anti-Semitic. What a joke. Oh, well, you see all these comments on the, under videos. Free AIPAC. A free America from AIPAC. Free America from Izzy. Well, we could see right there. We're definitely under the thumb, and all these the people in our government that are being blackmailed by them. Of course, then you still have the Epstein files and everything else. Then this shadiness going on with the Kirk assassination, which official story makes absolutely zero sense, as everybody knows, because it's not the true story. All right, well, that's what I have for you this evening. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for following my channel. Until next time.